Alright, so these are the components that we're going to use in building our model boat. Here's the controller. It's a pretty standard remote. A lot of little features that I'll kind of go into in just a bit. We've got our receiver and a bind plug. And we've got our speed controller, which has lots of connections there. There's the on-off switch on the side. We've got our clip for attaching it to the receiver. Our red and blue connects for a DC motor, and the battery adapter on there. Our battery is a standard nickel metal hydride battery. It is meant for hobbies. It's not 100% waterproof, but it can get wet, so as long as it's kept out of the water. And we'll be charging that with our charger here. It comes with a standard plug, just for connecting to the wall outlet, or some alligator clips if you've got a big 12-volt battery, if you're not connected there. And just a connection for connected straight to the battery. The settings are already predetermined for this type of battery. If you really want to go in your settings, you can make sure you are on the nickel metal hydride setting. And for a battery that size, you want to use 5 amps. The data button will show you how much charge has been done, but it's all automated, so you don't need to worry about it. And you just got to remember to hold down the start button until it chimes. After a little while, when it charges pretty quick, it'll do a little tune, and then go into trickle mode, so you don't lose your charge. So we've got a standard DC motor that we're going to be using for powering our propeller. We've got some connections for that, which we'll look at later. The leads on that are connected to male banana plugs. They're partially insulated, so the connections are pretty waterproof, but the motor itself is not cased in. If enough water gets in there, it can cause some damage, but for the most part, it's okay. It might get splashed a little bit. And we've got our servo motor, and our servo motor is supposed to be waterproof. I suspect it's more water resistant, so it's okay for it to get wet, but I wouldn't recommend submerging it in water. And it's got a connection on the end there for connecting it to our receiver. In order to use the receiver with the transmitter, we're going to have to bind them together. I've actually already done that, but I'll show you how it's done. On the receiver, there are several places to plug in. There's our auxiliary on the top, our throttle, our steering, and our bind. So what we'll do is we'll take our bind clip, which is this piece right here. I like to leave the cable on, even though it does say to remove it. It gets in the way a little bit, but I find it easier to not lose it. So we're going to take that, we're going to insert that. Got lost. We're going to insert that into the bind. We're going to insert that into the bind. Okay, so the other connection that we got to make is to put our speed controller. I like to hook it into the auxiliary, that way there's no signal being sent in. So I'll just take the lead off that and plug it into auxiliary. I'm also going to connect the battery to the speed controller and make sure the off switch is off. So there's my basic setup for binding it. You can see the battery plugged in, red to red, black to black. You wouldn't be able to hook it up the other way without breaking it. I don't have anything hooked up to the DC leads there, and my cable is into the auxiliary there now. If you're not familiar with how that works, usually your signal wire is your yellow or your white, positive is red, and normally I'm used to seeing black as your negative, but here it's a dark brown color. When I hit the switch on that, you're going to see the light flick on and off. It's going a little bit fast for my camera to pick up, but it is flickering. That tells me that I'm in bind mode. I'm going to take my controller and I'll just flick that on. Okay, actually I'm going to turn that off. What I want to do is simultaneously hold the bind button on the top, just located right here, and I'll hold that down and flick it on. If I hold that down for about 4 seconds, see that little dim there, I'm going to just let go, and now it's been bound to the receiver. Again, not sure if you could see the flickering, but now it's a solid light here. If I wanted a different safety setup, this is the fail-safe setting. So for, of course, our boat, we want the throttle to be at neutral and our steering to be straight. If you want it to be set a different way, you do that in the binding process. So I've gone ahead and connected my DC motor. Again, we've got our male connects, our bullets connecting to the female bullets. There's enough insulation around that to basically waterproof that connection. I'm not sure why they're connecting to a blue, but red to red and black to blue. The transmitter, I've switched that over to throttle, so now when I hit the handle, when I hit the throttle on the remote, it should control the DC motor. And I'll hook up the servo and show you how it works. So now my servo is connected into steering, white wire for signal, red for positive and black for negative. The servo motor itself, the white knob turns and we can hook any number of adapters onto that, so that'll give us the ability to steer. Just as a side note, I've kind of turned down my settings. If I didn't turn down my settings when I fired my DC motor, it does have enough kick to throw it around the table. So I wouldn't recommend testing that out without it being clamped down or somebody holding on to it just to make sure it doesn't go flying. I'll show you those settings then. So this controller is a little bit lower tech than the one we used last year. That's not necessarily a bad thing in this case. There's several settings that you can adjust right on here that allows you to fine-tune a lot of things. So for this particular case, we've got right here, this is basically it gives us a fine-tuned control over how much kick we're given. So if we find that it's not fine-tuning enough, then we can make an adjustment here. Here we've got our throttle setting. So if your engine is idling a little bit, even when you're at 0, you can adjust that. Shouldn't have to in this case, but it does happen from time to time. And we've got our steering offset, which again, if you've hooked up your rudder and it's off a little bit, you can adjust that to reset the 0. On the very top, we've got a number of settings as well. Again, binder we looked at earlier. We've also got our normal steering and our normal throttle. We can reverse those if we needed to. We won't here. Next, we've got our steering left and right. Right now they're set at 100%. You can overclock them to 150, I believe. You can also turn them down a fair bit. Because we're using a rudder, we're probably going to end up turning that down. But if you were using this to operate a car, you might want to turn it up a little bit. We've also got a throttle forward and reverse. And I've got them turned way down, again, so that it just kick. If you turn them all the way down, you might not get any response at all. So once everything's hooked up and we've got it in the water, we'll certainly crank those up a fair bit. We've also got our throttle limit, which I currently have set down to low. Again, if you're testing in a small space, you're going to want to keep it low. And you might want to make sure, depending on the weight of your vehicle, if you put that on high, you could kick a lot of water and could overload it. So again, this is the general setup that I've got. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the switch first. And again, you should have no indicator light at this point because the receiver is not receiving a signal. So on my remote, I'll just turn that on. Okay, now I am receiving a signal. You're not really going to see much here because I have nothing attached to my servo, but you might hear that. You certainly won't see it move because I have nothing attached to it, but that's being controlled by that. And like I said, we can fine tune that later on if we want. And the motor, which is probably going to kick a little bit, might have it turned down. Don't have it turned down too low that much. So I've got the reverse turned down too low, so I could fine tune that after. But you can see that the Ford is working. If I didn't have the settings turned down, the whole setup probably would have went off the table just now. So that's the basic operation. It's a bit of a mess there now, but you know, once it's inside, you'll be doing fine.